Welcome to TV Africa News. This is Africa Today. My name is Nahabe Kajura. Let's first start the headlines.
In the news today, Museveni claims opposition are agents of foreign interest. Electoral Commission starts training its officials ahead of the general election. And as economic growth slows. Also today, Zimbabwean journalist Chinono is arrested. These and more stories in our bulletin.
The news in details. The President of the Republic of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, has said that the opposition in Uganda are agents of foreign interests.
According to Mr. Museveni, the opposition members get support from some foreign individuals and states to destabilize the peace of the country.
Our system, I was not even in Kampala at that time, I was also campaigning. But the system automatically defeated because Uganda is not a failed state, it is not a dictatorial state, it's not an Egypt, it's not a Sudan, it's not a Libya, it is Uganda. Uganda where the people are in charge. Yes, there are some gaps, like the youth group, which is part of our success, but which needs to be handled in a better way, but not in the way they want, the way of violence.
He points out Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, who is also contesting for presidency at NOPCAD, that he mobilizes youths to be violent at the cost of other Ugandans who are innocent.
Is confused because he's not ideological, and he's being manipulated by so many groups, so many, especially the foreigners. In particular, is an agent of foreign interests. But the social group, the youth who feel marginalized, that's a healthy internal force which we are working with.
General Museveni says this type of approach by his counterparts is a sign of fear, and him, a freedom fighter, can't sit and watch when innocent Ugandans are dying. He wants them to stop it immediately, or otherwise they will face the authorities.
Some died, some 22, but 32 were definitely. Who started that violence? Anybody who brings violence will be defeated. There will be no violence. Anybody who knows, and that was a rehearsal, that one, because that's what they wanted, but it was defeated. And I think many people are now more careful.
Museveni's warnings come to add on yesterday's IGP message to all people planning to cause chaos during or after elections that they regret the day each was born, during a press security briefing that was held at police headquarters in Naguru. IGP Ochola also warned all people planning to stay at polling stations after voting that they are doing it on their own because they will face them. Only 5 days left to the general elections on 14th January, Ugandans will vote for president and members of parliament. For TV Africa News, Nalgo Muyingo reporting.
The Electoral Commission has started training its officials who are going to conduct the elections.
On 14th January this year, Ugandans will vote for their leaders, including the president and members of parliament. Almost every person in the country is waiting for this day to happen, and also the elections governing body, the Electoral Commission, has embarked on massive training of its officials on how the process will run. Mr. Ongaria demonstrates the importance of the training ahead of the general elections.
We commence polling. We conduct trainings of all staff that are going to take part in the elections. Apparently, countrywide, all districts are training officials. We call them polling day officials. And these are presiding officers, polling assistants, and police constables who are going to help us man all the polling stations around Uganda.
Every elections, the Electoral Commission recruits people who act as presiding officers and polling assistants.
Actually, and on the issue of recruitment of polling day officials, as Rubaga Division, for us we have played our role. We recruited, we invited people to apply. We have trained since Saturday. We started training the operators of the biometric voter verification kit. We trained them, and we hope and we are sure that they have digested what we trained them to do.
Yesterday, we broadcasted a story about the delay of biometric voter verification kits and how they are used. However, some Ugandans are still ignorant about the technology, and they have demonstrated about this. Today, we bring to you Ongaria Ezra, the returning officer of Rubaga Division, explaining the technology of these machines and their purpose.
Tetumanyi nkola yaabo, tetumanyi babukozi batya, naye nga kale okutwaliza ewamu tubukakasa bulungi, naye situnakyakukola kubanga bebaleese.
I've just clearly stated that with the voter slip or without. It means if you've lost it, but you appear on the voter's register, please go to the register and vote. Now, for those of you that have issues with their thumbprints, and we're going to have those scenarios, yes, we've prepared for them. This machine, the voter locator slip, has a manual. It has, you will follow prompts on that machine.
Welcome back from that break. As the coronavirus pandemic takes its toll on the economy, Uganda's economic growth has slowed down to second lowest rate in the recent past.
The Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development has said Uganda's gross domestic product is projected to grow by 3.1% this financial year 2021, which is lower than the pre-pandemic projection of 6.2%. This is arguably the second lowest rate since the financial year 2019-2020, where the economy grew at 2.9%. The Minister of Finance says the year 2020 has been a challenging one as far as economic management is concerned. This is mainly because of the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is not only a global health crisis, but also the biggest global economic crisis since the Great Depression of the 1930s. In the pre-election economic fiscal update released on January 5th, the Minister of Finance says during the year 2020, fiscal operations have been the most challenging. On the one hand, the slowdown in economic activity and international trade resulted in major revenue shortfalls. According to the ministry, expenditure has increased as additional funding has been required to deal with COVID-19 related economic and health challenges. This has translated into a widening fiscal deficit projected to be 10.7% this financial year, up from 7.2% in the financial year 2019-2020. Public debt stock is projected to increase to 49.9% of the GDP in the financial year 2020-2021 from 41.2% in the financial year 2019-2020. Going forward, the government of Uganda remains committed to increasing revenue mobilization efforts and moderating borrowing to ensure fiscal and debt sustainability. Emphasis will be on accelerating implementation of the domestic revenue mobilization strategy, increasing efficiency in public expenditure and investment, and enhancing prioritization in line with the Third National Development Plan to ensure that the economy returns to potential growth levels. Basing on the statistics of the first half of the current fiscal year 2020-2021, 26.615 trillion shillings or 58.5% of the total approved budget has been released for spending. Of this amount, 20.626 trillion shillings was for externally financed projects as well as all government discretionary spending, thus excludes debt service, domestic debt refinancing, external amortization and interest payments. 11.68 trillion shillings, equivalent to 56.6% of the amount released for this purpose, has been spent in the period July to October 2020. Expenditures on recurrent and development activities amounted to 6.595 trillion shillings and 4.156 trillion shillings respectively, while expenditures associated with HPPs and BOU recapitalization, considered as net lending and domestic arrears repayments, amounted to 554.4 billion shillings and 378.4 billion shillings respectively. Major expenditure drivers in the financial year 2020-2021 are mainly related to mitigating the health challenges posed by COVID-19 and alleviating its impact on the economy and the livelihoods of the vulnerable population. These COVID-19 related expenditures in the first half of the financial year 2020-2021, among other public health response measures, 170.03 billion shillings was released to enhance health systems through increasing direct health expenditures for both COVID-19 interventions and capacity strengthening, and supporting scientists and innovators engaged in scientific research for COVID-19 interventions. To mitigate the economic and social impact of the pandemic, government announced a stimulus package which seeks to restore household incomes and safeguard jobs, provide emergency social protection, and reignite business activity. Since last financial year, the Minister of Finance has allocated a total of 1.073 trillion shillings to the various ministries, departments, and agencies involved in the whole electoral roadmap. Of that amount, 768.42 billion shillings has already been released to them, and the remaining amount will be released as planned.
Zimbabwe police on Friday arrested prominent journalist Hopewell Chin-Ono. The arrest comes after Chin-Ono tweeted that police had beaten an infant to death while enforcing COVID-19 lockdown rules this week. Police later said that the information was false. Let's have more of the story. Chin Ono posted on his Twitter account that police had picked him from his house and said they were charging him with communicating falsehoods. Before the latest arrest, Chin Ono was out on bail on separate charges of insisting violence after he voiced support for an anti-government protest in July, and also on contempt of court charges for allegedly claiming corruption within the country's National Prosecution Agency. Chin Ono is one of Zimbabwe's most prominent critics of President Emerson Mnangagwa's administration, accusing it of corruption and human rights abuses. The government denies the charges. Before he was arrested in July, Chin Ono had published an expose on Twitter in which he alleged corruption involving a $60 million purchase of protective equipment for health workers. Mnangagwa later fired the health minister, who has been formally charged with corruption in the case. Chin Ono and his backers say he is being targeted for exposing government corruption. The government and the ruling party accuse him of being out to tarnish Mnangagwa's image. The Confederation of African Football has announced that outgoing President Ahmed Ahmed is ineligible to stand for the second term in the coming CAF elective assembly scheduled for 12th of March 2021 in Morocco. This was announced after the Independent CAF Governance Committee met on the 5th and 6th January, chaired by Michel Bizol from Ivory Coast. The committee consists of professional lawyers from across the continent. Ahmed Ahmed had earlier shown interest for the second term in office after taking over from Issa Hayatou in 2017, but his request couldn't go past the committee as he still serves a year ban imposed onto him for Federation of the International Football Association for violating the ethics and code of conduct. He was found guilty in using football money to finance Umrah pilgrim to Mecca and also fined $200,000 by the Federation. CAF says it has received and it's currently evaluating 5 candidatures for the presidency of the body, whose election will take place on 12th March in Rabat, Morocco. The committee also ruled out requests from Tlhopeng Motspi of South Africa, who doubles as the president of Mamelodi Sundowns, as well as Ahmed Yahya for Mauritania, as they have been deemed dismissible and they will have to wait for the final committee assessment on January 28, 2020. The committee went ahead to confirm Jacques Band Daniel Anoma from Ivory Coast and Augustin Emmanuel Sengui from Senegal as the only eligible candidate for the presidential seat in the coming CAF elective assembly, as we wait for the second and final assessment for the committee. Thank you so much for watching the news with us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We shall keep updating you.
This is Africa, and that was the news.